Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Sitaram Yechury's election as General Secretary of the CPM may have been called unanimous, but it was also the most contested in the party's 50-year history. So what is the state of the party inherits? Can he revive his fortunes from their lowest ever ebb? And in what way will he seek to change the party and its functioning? Those are the key issues I shall put in part 2 to Sitaram Yechury himself. But first, did we see a reinvigorated Rahul Gandhi yesterday at his rally and today in Parliament? Or is that just media hype? And could his attack on the land acquisition amendments put the Modi government on the defensive? Or is the government's Vadra riposte likely to check the Congress's campaign? With me to debate and discuss these issues is the Congress Party's Rajasthan President and former Minister Sachin Pilot and the BJP's national spokesperson Nalin Kohli. Sachin Pilot, yesterday Rahul Gandhi said that Mr. Modi had won an election by borrowing thousands of crores from crore-patis, and he would now return the debt by forcefully acquiring farmers' land and then selling it cheaply to industrialists. Many people think that's libel and calumny. Don't you think Rahul Gandhi owes an apology to Mr. Modi?
Well, I think what Mr. Gandhi did yesterday was voicing the common perception today that is very, very rooted in India, is that this government is somehow trying to weaken the land acquisition bill to help a certain people, and the majority of Indian farmers feel threatened because the only assets they have is the land holdings. And I can assure you that the Congress party is not against investments or factories or industrialization. We want that to happen. We want jobs to get created. All we're saying is let the farmers get equitable money for their resources. Let them know what the future holds for them. Let them have the rights. And Mr. Gandhi, I think today has certainly put the BJP on a back foot. The perception today is that the BJP is doing something wrong to the poor and they must be answerable.
You know, Nalin Kohli, I began by asking Sachin Pilot whether Rahul Gandhi owes Mr. Modi an apology. I could ask the opposite question to you. First in Germany and then in Canada, Mr. Modi went out of his way to disparagingly run down previous UPA governments. He said they had created filth and he had been left with the onerous task of cleaning up. Now that comment was as bad as Rahul Gandhi's. If Mr. Modi hasn't apologized, why should Rahul Gandhi?
Well, perhaps the differentiator which needs to be taken into account is the truth. That's the only differentiator. In Delhi, we have seen Mr. Gandhi come up with an unsubstantiated allegation. Where is it? Where are those checks of loans? And who has he taken loans from to fight elections? Who, by the way, takes loans and fights elections? Maybe that's a Congress model. Now, let's get back to the other fact. That is India, and was India an attractive destination? Was India's credibility internationally at its lowest, say a year ago, before the elections? Now these are realities, and if he's addressing an Indian audience, Indian diaspora audience, who's very well connected back home, knows the truth completely, reiterating the truth cannot be a line of defamation.
You know, Sachin Pilot, while Rahul Gandhi is focusing adverse attention on what he derisively calls the Modi model, the BJP is hitting back by talking about the Vadra model, which they claim is a way of transforming a few lakhs into figures over 50 crore with the help of the state government. Now, are you not worried that the Vadra model could be the Achilles heel of the Gandhi family? And you're inviting this sort of response.
You know, over the years, we've heard so much being talked about Mr. Vadra and all the issues surrounding it. My simple question is that if you believe something is wrong, you have state governments in Haryana, state governments in Rajasthan, your government in Government of India for last 1 year, why don't you investigate and come up with the truth? Who's stopping you? But as a political tool to keep using it when you are in an uncomfortable position, you can't answer about the Land Acquisition Act, so you bring, a distracting voice into the discussion. What I want to say is that what Mr. Modi had said outside this country, me and Mr. Kohli can argue on this debate, no problem. But outside this country as a Prime Minister, you can't talk negative about your country. I think it's, and don't say it's an Indian audience. What you say as Prime Minister is televised around the world. I think it's unbecoming of a Prime Minister to have said that outside the Indian soil. Secondly, Mr. Modi said perverse minds are spreading propaganda against a land bill. It is not perverse mind. It is perverse to ask questions. It is perverse to say, why are you doing a U-turn? We want to put you on the mat in Parliament. It's democracy. We have to say people are committing suicide 1 every 3 hours in this country, and we said we shouldn't ask even questions to this government. That won't happen.
You know, the truth, Nalin Kohli, is that first yesterday and today, Rahul Gandhi has suddenly driven home very forcefully and perhaps even very emotionally the fact, or the image rather, that this is a government that is pursuing land acquisition amendments for the rich. The beneficiaries will be industrialists who he claims are in fact crony friends of Mr. Modi. The losers will be the farmers, which is 67% of the country. That's an image that could do great disadvantage to your government, and that's the image that's being rammed home in the last 2 days. Doesn't it worry you that he's finding a resonance with the media today, tomorrow probably with the people as well?
Well, Mr. Thapar, first of all, any serious, committed political worker knows that substance will matter over rhetoric, and rhetoric cannot be the only method on functioning. Now, Mr. Gandhi is entitled to any allegations, making any allegations, speaking in rhetorical terms, but facts are otherwise. So let's go one by one. The 2013 bill had 50 drafting errors. Should they not be eliminated, or should the errors be allowed to continue so that they land up in the courts thereafter?
But it's not the errors we're talking about.
Worth 13 acts, worth 30 drafting errors. They were drafting errors, and this Mr. Jaitley has said it on the record. Then, in addition to it, there are 13 acts that were excluded, whether it's for railways, whether it's for highways, for the mines.
The 2013 Act itself said that those 13 would have to be included within a year.
Let me finish.
You didn't need to amend everything else to include them.
Mr. Thapar, I'm requesting only for the same amount of time that I'm able to make my points. Do ask me a counter question when I end, but at least don't break my flow. So there are 13 acts of parliament, which was for railways, for highways, for mines, that they were excluded. They have been included. 4 times the market value has to be paid. With regard to farmers' consent, it is there for private projects. It's not been removed. It's all misinformation. It has been removed basically for government projects where government will hold the land. The land is not going to go to the private people. So basically the Congress party is trying to build a case on aggression, on rhetoric and misinformation. They are entitled to do so. If they have a genuine point, they would certainly be welcome to come and share it. That's what the Prime Minister said. That's what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu as Parliamentary Affairs Minister said. But you can't listen only to rhetoric and be silent and say, no, you're allowed to your misinformation campaign. If there's something substance, obviously in the nation's interest, everyone would work together. Who wouldn't?
Sachin Pilot, the Congress campaign centers around the allegation or the claim that in fact what the land acquisition amendments do is to effectively deprive farmers forcefully of their land. That's an emotional way of appealing to farmers, and you may well succeed. But what you're not able to counter is the point made by Mr. Venkaiah Naidu today on the floor of Parliament and earlier by Arun Jaitley, that in fact it is only through these amendments to the land acquisition bill that you can have rural jobs, rural irrigation, rural infrastructure, and most importantly, livelihood for farmers' children. Now, farmers don't like to lose their land, I agree, but farmers also know that their land holdings are too small to sustain their families. They know that they need jobs for their families. And are you not worried that the second half of the message, when it filters through, will work against you?
I think the misinformation today is the fact that we are against factories coming up for jobs. Why take irrigated land that's fertile next to the highways? Why don't you take wastelands? You make factories there, you make an airport, railway line. Who's stopping you? The fact that you want to grab a small piece of land, it's next to the highway, it's valuable. Even if there's no work done in 5 years, the government will have to keep the land. They won't return the land. And I think my objection is very clear. What we are saying in the Congress party is that the 2013 Act was very clear that you acquire land with consent. You don't give a notice saying you're taking your land. If someone wants to take a land in a commercial area, you require consent. But the fact that you want no debate, no discussion, you push through an ordinance, you don't have there's not one all-party meeting has been held on this issue, not one. And by the way, let me finish. In Parliament, I happened to be there in Parliament. You hear Sushma Swaraj's speech. Mrs. Swaraj sat in floor of the House as Leader of Opposition. She says, Jairam Ramesh, this is my bill. I support it. 26 amendments were made by the BJP Standing Committee Chairman, Ms. Sumitra Mahajan. 24 of them we accepted. 80% consent clause, they wanted to make it 100%. We said, let it be 80%, is more practical. But today, after taking votes of people last elections, now they say, well, hang on a second, there'll be no jobs. By the way, the misconception is that only 8% of the projects are held up because of land problems. Other projects are held because of financial closure or legal issues. Only 8%. Take the land, but don't take farmers' land. Speak to them, pay them enough money. Why be a real estate broker? Why the government should be agent of the land sharks and hold land banks? Go to undeveloped areas and take up land and make factories there. Food security, where will the farmers go?
A short answer.
We have to import food from outside.
Let's keep this a debate between the two of you rather than long answers. Nalin Kohli, it's not just on the land acquisition that your government looks as if it's on the back foot. Today, very effectively, confronted with the agrarian sense of crisis that the country is going through, particularly because of the untimely rains that have destroyed crops, Rahul Gandhi very effectively pointed out that your government doesn't even know the extent of acreage where crops have been destroyed. Your figures vary from 80 lakh crore to 180 lakh crore. Meanwhile, the minimum support price is only increased by a very miserly 5%. Agricultural growth is a very poor 1%. Those are telling facts that farmers today feel much more acutely than the somewhat more distant threat of the land acquisition amendments. And on these more immediate threats, you're very vulnerable.
I will need little time to answer your question and also some of the comments by Mr. Pilot. First of all is about today. The figures are coming from the states, and the states are revising the figures because the land is in the states. They are not in Delhi or central Delhi. With regard to the figure, the Agriculture Minister, Mr. Radha Mohan Singh, said it in Parliament that the government of Himachal Pradesh, when he did a video conference, they acknowledged and said this was the first time that a Union Minister of Agriculture was taking the initiative to do so. Has not compensation levels been enhanced to ensure that instead of 50% damage being a claim for helps, it is now being reduced to 33%, and instead of 2.5 acres, even 5 acres or 2 hectares is there now new norm. The government is doing what it has to. It's talking to the states to dip into their own disaster funds, state disaster relief funds, and the government will be there to take care of it further, or if required, the National Disaster Relief Fund. So the government's doing it. Let's go back to the pleas that are being spoken about. Certainly Mr. Pilot would have had a case. If Mr. Pilot could have shown us through all the coal mines that was given away at the cost of the National Exchequer, where was consent taken of those whose lands went? All the projects which is estimated at 7 lakh crores pending over the last 1 decade, when they were in office, they had done something to ensure it. They are saying that why should there be a 5-year clause? Have they implemented projects in the 5 years that they've been in office for 10? So therefore, you can make a case if you have some grounds, or you can stick to rhetoric. And that's exactly what I'm saying from the beginning. We can talk. There is always a ground to work in the interest of the country together, provided it's beyond rhetoric. And lastly, who says that there cannot be an improvement in the bill or an act? The Constitution of India has changed or has been amended over 100 times. So are we to say just because the Constitution was in an original form in 1950, it cannot be tampered with again? These are arguments made by one who can't take it ahead on substance.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on beyond the content, because one of the most striking things about Rahul Gandhi, both yesterday and today, wasn't just the content, it was also the tone and the style. And there I want to put you, Sachin Pilot. He seemed to be deliberately and very determinedly focusing his attack in a fairly personal way directly on Mr. Modi. Today, for instance, he called it a suit boot sarkar. He repeatedly taunted the BJP by saying, Aapka Pradhan Mantri. Yesterday, he was even personal about Mr. Modi. I get the feeling that now the target is Mr. Modi and less the land acquisition bill or the government. Am I right? Is Mr. Modi in your sights?
Well, it is a one-man government, there's no doubt about it. But I want to make a prediction, Mr. Thapar. What Mr. Rahul Gandhi said today in Parliament is going to haunt the BJP for a very long time. This suit boot ki sarkar comment, I know people were smiling when they heard Rahul Gandhi say that, because that's the perception today. And I think the perception has taken roots because of facts. Mr. Modi, of course, made tall promises. He's become Prime Minister and he's India's Prime Minister, but he's not beyond scrutiny. I might add, he has to be accountable to Parliament and to the people of India. And the principal opposition party is well within its right to speak up for the voices who have been suppressed. And Mr. Modi has to answer. He can't be touring 13 countries in 11 months and coming back to India where people are committing suicide and saying, we've improved the act. Who have you spoken to? Have you been to Parliament? Have you spoken to any political party? Have you spoken to any farmer? But you think the best way to do is remove the clauses, remove the consent clause, acquire land at whatever rate, and then do whatever you want with it. I'm sorry, government of the day, no matter what majority you have, you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want, and you have to be accountable.
Nalin Kohli, the truth is, during the election campaign that culminated in May, Mr. Modi was very personal and very effective in his attacks on the Gandhi family. He converted Rahul into Shehzade and that name stuck. He talked about Ma Beti Ki Sarkar and that description stuck. Now, Rahul Gandhi is returning the compliment and maybe Suit Boot Ki Sarkar will hurt and stick in much the same way. Now that in fact the boot is on the other foot, so to speak, how is Mr. Modi going to handle this situation?
Permit me to give you an alternative case. Mr. Pilot has pointed out about the Prime Minister's numerous foreign visits. Now, therefore, if Mr. Rahul Gandhi or anyone would like to compare him with the Prime Minister, perhaps some would say that he is doing the BJP a favour. Tell me one visit that Mr. Gandhi has undertaken outside this country for work, and show me one visit that Mr. Modi has undertaken outside this country for pleasure or for a holiday or vacation.
There is a difference.
So therefore,
Mr. Modi is Prime Minister and Mr. Gandhi is not.
Difference. Okay.
Mr. Gandhi is not Prime Minister.
But Mr. Rahul Gandhi, let me answer this. If Mr. Gandhi's entire approach to speaking on farmers' issue is limited to a visit to Niyamgiri in 2008, to Bhatta Parsol in 2011, and of course missing the movement that started in Bhatta Parsol a few weeks ago, and of course in between to Australia, where he deliberated about his experiences there, he may have a rather large worldview about farmers' issues, but can he claim to speak for all the farmers of the country?
Okay.
This suit boot is, I think, Mr. Rahul Gandhi's attempt to somehow remove the taint on him that he spends more time probably outside the country than within the country.
Okay.
At least he's not seen here that often. So that charge is going to be there. And therefore, when he rides in a nice expensive car, he probably draws more
Let's keep the answer short. I'd like this to be conversational between the two of you.
If some would say it makes a delicious comparison.
Sachin Pilot, the Congress today is extremely pleased with Rahul Gandhi's performance both yesterday and today. You believe a new reinvigorated Rahul has been launched. And I grant you, he's had 2 good days. But they are just 2 good days. He's got 10 years of bad performance to wipe out. And the people of India don't have such short memories. Do you really believe that a good
Mr.
speech
Thapar,
on one day can change the man's image around so comprehensively that the past is forgotten?
Why are we all limiting this entire debate to Mr. Gandhi and the Congress party? It is an agrarian issue. People are feeling nervous about their land, and Mr. Gandhi...
Because I invited you to talk about Mr. Gandhi. That's why we're limiting it to Mr. Gandhi. It's the question we're asking is he a new reinvigorated man?
Well, he's certainly been committed from day one. It's up to you how you judge his performance. We won 2 elections back to back in 2004, 2009.
Okay.
For the first time in 30 years, any political party has won 2 elections. We lost one, we take it with humility. But today, he's raising the issue not because we are in opposition. When we were in government in Bhatta Parsol, he fought against the Land Act that time. And the genesis of that is his agitation in Bhatta Parsol. And today, he is defending what he started 4 years ago.
Okay.
And today, the BJP has done a U-turn, have no answers. I'm making personal allegations, which I think is not going to satiate the questions that people have been asking.
Nalin Kohli, let me put the opposite to you. You know, when people change, it's one day at a time. Today there was a very forceful Rahul Gandhi. Yesterday there was a very effective Rahul Gandhi. And let's face it, your party in Parliament clearly looked on the back foot. If Mr. Gandhi has actually come back reinvigorated, Mr. Modi could be facing the most serious challenge he's faced in the last 10 months. Are you worried that Rahul Gandhi's vacation or his contemplation have done him so much good that he's come back with his engines fired up and a new voice to roar at the government?
I'm just reminded of an old adage. History repeats itself. So if I just use at the history of what we've seen of Mr. Gandhi's performance so far as a full-fledged working person, it's mostly been restricted to event, sometimes being in a local train, sometimes visiting and spending the night at someone's place, landing up at Bhatta Parsol, going to Niyamgiri. And they've been few and far apart, well orchestrated photo opportunities. We've not seen that consistency. 2 days can be a novelty when you don't see all of that. Let us wait to say Mr. Gandhi is entitled to chart out his political future. The Congress party is entitled to celebrate it. Now, whether Mr. Gandhi is a challenge or not a challenge to Mr. Modi and the BJP government, NDA government, that only time can answer. What will be the barometer of that? People, when they vote. So far, the farmers who they are speaking for are the ones who voted. They voted out the government. If they were delighted and happy, why would they have come out with such a huge vote? We will be facing the hustings in 2019.
All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. You're absolutely right, Nalin Kohli, when you quote that phrase, history repeats itself. I believe it was Marx you're actually quoting, but the second half is what you left out. It repeats itself first as tragedy, then as farce. Now, if it's going to be tragedy, Will it be tragedy for the BJP or for Congress? That's the bit you didn't answer. We leave that hanging in the air. My thanks to both my guests for joining me. Time for a break, but then, can Sitaram Yechuri unite a divided CPM behind his leadership? And how will he tackle the challenge of reviving the party's collapsed fortunes?